Perfect. And now, Janet, you and I mute and turn off our videos. Mayor, it looks like we're live. Let everybody in.
Mackenzie, what am I doing?
You turn off your video and mute your audio.
Yep, it shows we are live on YouTube, so we're good.
And Mayor, I've just submitted everyone into the meeting.
Did you say?
I saw that. Everybody come through. Okay. We'd like to thank Janet Dennison, our new city recorder, and also Mackenzie Wood that's helping her out. This is Janet's first time of handling the YouTube, and she's doing a fine job. So we'll do just great tonight. So thank you. Welcome to the Centerville City Council meeting of November 17th, 2020, being held at 7 o'clock by Zoom. Let's do a roll call to make sure that we can proceed with this meeting. Councilwoman Ivy.
Present.
Councilman McEwen.
Present.
Councilwoman Fillmore.
Here.
And Councilwoman Meekum. Did we lose her? We lost her somewhere.
Well, her house is still there.
Huh. And Councilman Entz. Councilman Entz, I believe, is traveling, but is planning on being here. There she is. Councilwoman Meekum, raise your hand or wave to us or say here. There you go. So she's here as well. So we have 4 of our 5 council people present, and hopefully we'll have Councilman Entz join us shortly. So we can proceed with this meeting. So I want to read a statement at the start of this meeting. In accordance with Utah Code 52-4-2074 of the Utah Open and Public Meeting Act, I have determined that conducting an electronic meeting of the Centerville City Council with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. This determination is based on the facts and circumstances surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic. Considering the continued number of COVID-19 case counts in Utah, meeting in an anchor location presents substantial risk to the health and safety of those in attendance because physical distancing measures may be difficult to maintain at City Hall. So that is why we are on Zoom tonight. Let's begin with a prayer thought, and that is by me, so I will begin with a prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we're very grateful for this opportunity that we have to gather as elected officials, staff, community, and others in this Centerville City Council meeting. We're grateful and thankful for the freedoms that allow us to do this. We are mindful of many in our community that may be struggling with this COVID-19 infliction. We ask that Thou may bless them and bless all of us to show patience and kindness during these most difficult times, that we may be able to step up to the level where we love our fellow man and show that kindness and appreciation to them. We're thankful once again for the freedom to meet this night, and ask that Thou may bless all of us that participate with civility, with sound thinking and judgment, and that we may be able to show that respect to all that are participating. We're grateful for those that protect our freedoms, both in our city and our state and our country and throughout this world. And this we say in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. All right, next we get the Pledge of Allegiance. So hopefully we can get a flag on the screen, and there we go, perfect. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. As always, in our council meetings, we have an open session. This is an opportunity for members of the public to discuss anything that may be on their minds. We ask that if you are inclined to participate, that you keep your comments to a couple minutes. And so I will now allow that open session to get into that. Is appearing on the screen, a dial-in number, a meeting ID, and a passcode. And I will also look for raised hands as well too, through the Zoom feature. So that is now open for comment. I'll give it a few minutes for those that are trying to figure it out. I don't see any raised hands. I haven't been informed that anybody else has called in. And so we will close the open session and move on to the business of the meeting. The first item of business is the Summer Hill Lane subdivision. And this is a item of business, that the city council originally took up on October 20th. And we reviewed the application and conducted a public hearing. And the action was then tabled and directed the applicant to consider several changes. In your packet, council members, you should have found detailed descriptions of what has taken place so far with this. I would ask staff, specifically maybe Corey, if there's anything else that we should consider before we start discussing this issue.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I did recently add to your packet, there was some discussion in previous phone calls with some council members about the new lot sizes. So I did contact the applicant. They provided an update today. And so if you look at your background information under the agenda item at the top, there's an added one sheet that will list all the lot sizes. Below that is the updated concept plan provided by the applicant. And I've also provided a memo to you to at least summarize what your motion for tabling occurred, what you were expecting. And then at the bottom of that memo, I've added the Planning Commission recommendation to you and then provided some red lines to that recommendation simply to reflect the updated information. But other than that, you directed the applicant to answer some questions. So unless you have specific of me, I'll turn it over to the mayor again to allow the applicant to speak.
Thank you, Corey. Applicant, and it looks like maybe it's Russ Wilson that's present from the applicant. Maybe you can discuss some of these changes we're looking at and what you've come back. Welcome to our council meeting.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. As you can see, we're still here. We never left. We appreciate your time tonight. My name is Russ Wilson, the land manager with Symphony Homes, and I'm joined tonight by Bruce Robinson as well. Let's see if I can turn the camera a little bit. I'd like to screen share if I could and bring up our revised concept plan.
Okay, we'll grant you access.
There we go.
Perfect. Thank you. Good job.
Okay, there we go. So this is our revised concept. As you can see, we took your recommendations and suggestions to heart. One of the things that we included that we wanted to show was a connection to the frontage road. And this is the location where we've put it. We've had several discussions following the last city council meeting with the city engineer, and he's arrived at this would be the best location for that connection to frontage road because it's the most evenly spaced between the connection that's on the south and then the future connection up at 2150 North. By doing that, so we've lost 3 lots out of our concept plan. We originally had 66, we're down to 63 now. We've lost 1 lot from that connection, and we've lost a couple more lots as we've taken a look at our lot sizes. Our overall density in the subdivision as a whole now is actually 3.5. And so we've reduced that. Once again, we're not asking for any density bonuses. We are below that 4 mark, which is what the RL zone allows. As you can see from our concept plan, the lots immediately adjacent to Lexington Park have been increased in size. Overall, we've increased most of these lower lots in size. We had several 4,000 square foot lots before. Now our smallest lot size that we're showing on this plan is I believe 5,700 square feet. And there's still a few minor adjustments to be made, but we're planning on making all lots within our subdivision a minimum of 5,800 square feet total. Another thing that we've been working on has to do with setbacks, and I'm going to bring this up briefly. This is what the RL zone setbacks are, and then these are our proposed setbacks. And one of the things that I wanted to point out is that we've increased our setback from our proposed setback from 5 feet to 6 feet, side yard setback. And this may not seem like a big deal, but when you're thinking about 10 feet total separation between buildings compared to 12, which is what we're at now, that's a 20% increase. But that's something that we've looked at, and that's something that we're willing to do. We've paid more attention to frontages and increasing our frontages on a lot of the lots within the subdivision. And what that will do is allow us to have better aesthetics in the community and more interesting front elevations as well. I'm going to turn the time over to Bruce to add any comments that he might have.
Well, this might seem strange coming from a developer, but we appreciate the discussion at the last city council meeting because there were a number of items shared, and sometimes in our chair, when you listen to all that, you think, gosh, how can I do all this? But when we went back to our engineer and tried to incorporate as much of the feedback as we got, I think when I honestly look at this, I think the project's better because you forced us to look at it harder. And we lost some lots, the lots are bigger, but we're going to be able to get better housing on this project. And when we really looked at the product that we want to build here, we think this layout with the slightly wider lots will help us build fronts that are more beautiful and that will make us prouder as a builder to have this community. And so even though sometimes it feels like there's some tension there, I think your feedback helped us, and we've got a better project as a result of that. So in some respects, it's odd, but I'm thanking you for pushing us to do this. I think we're going to end up with a better community. In terms of the fronts of the houses, it's very important that we have enough space to create on the front of the house, aside from the garage, enough of the rest of the house to make an interesting front, to have a porch, to have windows and spaces that are meaningful, and these frontages allow us to do that. Do you have any questions, or do you want to continue on and they can ask questions later?
I think that's all I had to share. Are there questions right now that we can answer?
Well, from what I see, Russ and Bruce, I'm looking at the original map. So you're saying that the smallest lot now would be just under 5,800?
Well,
before we were down at like 4,500 on the smallest lot, right?
That's right. So we got this plat from our engineer, and we didn't have time with him to tweak it slightly before he went on a 1-week diving trip to Mexico. So there's some, when we're done with this, the minimum lot size will be 5,800 square feet. They're just very minor adjustments that need to be made.
We could fix that in the ordinance to ensure that that's the minimum lot size.
It's just 6 inches here, a foot here, and we can make the adjustments.
Yeah, like you can see, they're very close. I mean, you can see these ones are 5775. So just a slight adjustment in lot lines will get us up to the 5,800 square feet.
Okay, thanks.
I appreciate your acknowledgement about those larger lot size allowing for the quality front elevations, which in my assessment and training and opinion is an important aspect of really creating a neighborhood feeling. We talked last time about having you show us some front elevations. Were you not able to prepare those? I didn't see them in the packet.
So with the lots being a little bit of a moving target, we barely got these lot frontages back. We did not have time to get, I think, a meaningful number of those completed to show you. We could give those to you there, but we did not have time to get that done.
Let me ask you this. Do you feel comfortable with the 40% number that I threw out last time?
So let me talk to you about the 40% number. So we were comfortable with a lot of the suggestions, and I think I get where you're going with that 40% number, but here's the challenge that places. So if an average 2-car garage is 21 feet wide, 21 feet is 40% of what number? And that number would be up around 52 to 53 feet. And then you add the side yards on. What that would mean to hit that number is our minimum lot width would have to be 65 feet wide to hit that ratio. And then some of these lots were intended to have 3-car garages. And if you have a standard 3-car garage at 33 to 34 feet wide, would need a minimum lot size of 96 to 98 feet of width to put a 3-car garage on some of these lots. So that ratio, I think we understand where you're headed with that, because I know you want to make the fronts of the houses lovely, but that ratio is kind of arbitrary and random and really boxes us into a product that most builders just doesn't work for the way we build.
Mm-hmm.
It just creates some really unusual consequences that I think are unintended that would be very difficult to manage too.
Okay.
But I get the point that you want a beautiful front and you don't want the garage to dominate it, that you'd like something that looks good. But the ratio is specific ratio is hard to manage too.
Well, and the issue for me was more on the smaller lots where you were asking for the exception for the smaller lots, because 60 feet is the frontage that's required anyway. And so, you know, if the range is 40 to 50%, and on those smaller lots, then that would be assuming that would force the assumption of a 2-car garage on the smaller lots for sure, right? So I was tying that to the fact that you were asking for some exceptions on the setbacks, and with that tighter feeling, just increasing the quality as kind of an exchange. But I do understand your point, and as we discussed it last time, the rest of the council wasn't in strong agreement with me on that, so I guess we'll just see how that plays out tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Other council members, questions for the applicant or our staff?
I really appreciate the change on the setbacks. I
I love neighbors, but I don't like them within handshake distance of their side of their buildings. So thank you for changing that a little. Could you talk to me about the road going north on 4th West? Can you explain what that's doing and how that's working with your project?
Regarding 400 West, it's and Corey can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a 60-foot wide collector street, and we are dead ending it at the end of our subdivision boundary. So we understand it's a master planned road to go all the way up to Lund Lane in the future, but we're taking it to the extent of our property, and it's a dead end.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Other council members?
I just want to echo what Stephanie said, just a thanks for the changes and adjustments, and looks like a great product that a lot of people participated in getting us there, and we appreciate you being willing participants.
I have a question for Corey.
Corey, you there?
I'm still here.
Corey, relative to the ordinance as it's currently drafted, where would you recommend inserting the minimum lot size? And it looks like at least another functional edit we'll need to take the maximum dwellings down to 63. Where would you recommend adding the edit for the minimum lot size?
If I remember right, I don't have the memo in front of me, I can bring it up, but there's a listing in one of the conditions up front that says the plan will be limited to this kind of acreage, given this situation. I think there's some bullet points you could just add, and minimum lot sizes will be 5,800 square feet.
Okay.
Does that make sense, or do I need to?
It does. I'm looking over the conditions. I'm just wondering, based on past ordinances that have been done on PDOs, if you had a specific location you were saying insert it under, 0.3 bullet 2, that sort of thing. So I'm sure we can just add it in there. But I'm just looking over, and I do want to echo what the other council members have said. I think you've done a fantastic job of coming back with a lot of challenges that we placed on the project, and have done a really good job. So from my perspective, the pieces I'm looking at now are more the structural components of the ordinance, what needs to be changed to match up with what we're seeing tonight. So.
Looks like we could just, George, it looks like we could just add a 14 and 15, or even just in a 14.
Yeah.
And just state 5,800 square feet and maximum 63 lots.
Well, five single family uses, maximum number of dwellings is 66 units. So we can take that one, just
amend that one. Yeah. Okay.
So I think that'll handle it.
So I'm also really excited with what you've done. I feel like you've worked really well with the city council and the residents in the area. I want the residents in the area, as they look at this, to realize there are some smaller lots, but it's not going to be a Woods Park, because you have a few small lots and then you have a bigger lot. And so it's not going to give you that same feel, I don't think. So I love the fact that you have thrown in a few bigger lots down on the other end. I'm really happy with it. I have a question. I think it's item 13 from the Planning Commission, putting a 12-foot access into the landlocked piece of property. I'm wondering if we know where that is, or if we have any more information on that.
Robin, on that one, I'm actually hoping Lisa will weigh in on that. I'm concerned, because I was concerned when that was brought up by the Planning Commission. I'm not sure it's appropriate for the PDO to have that in there, because that is a civil matter.
I've actually done a lot of research on that in the last week. I do think that it is appropriate, because the developer did offer it at the Planning Commission. It wasn't asked, and they did offer that. And my concern is, if we did have that piece of landlocked property behind these yards, and the piece down below didn't let him in either, you're going to have over an acre of property that would have absolutely no way to get in it. You're going to have mosquito ponds, you're going to have weeds. They would have no way to even get in there and care of that property. So agree with you. It needs to be settled between them, courts, whatever. But I do want to make sure that we do go with the item 13 and leave that in there so that we do know there is access in there to take care of that property. Because we certainly wouldn't want a piece of property back behind all those backyards that was unavailable to anybody to get on to take care of.
I hear
Lisa,
what you're saying, but I'm gonna keep my comments until after Lisa
My
speaks.
other comment is they were only allowed 1,200 feet in a block, and they've got 1,300. So I think that should help with putting that in, then that will take care of that problem also.
Lisa, before we go any further with this, will you weigh in, please?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I did want to highlight for the council in the staff report in your packet is condition number 13, providing a 12-foot all-weather access, farm access for the Packer property adjacent to the Symphony property. And you will note there that this condition is not recommended by staff. I think that's from a planning perspective as well as a legal perspective. I think, as I've said from the beginning at the Planning Commission meeting, this access, whether it's a deeded right or a prescriptive right, in my opinion, is very much a private matter between the two property owners that they need to resolve. I think we've seen a lot of, we've had input from both sides. Both sides are represented by attorneys, and they've sent us memorandums on this issue, which in my opinion just highlights that this really isn't the obligation or authority of Centerville City to resolve. It's a private matter. In my opinion, the Packer property is already landlocked, and the Symphony property is not necessarily landlocking them by this subdivision. But obviously, the Packers and their attorneys feel differently. I think their remedy is to either cooperate or come up with a settlement with the developer, or to seek their remedy in the courts. But prescriptive rights are very much a factual matter that the courts could just going to have to decide. So as I've said, I think that the property owners need to resolve this on their own. I'm concerned about the city's legal ability to require this access from Symphony. I do think that Councilwoman Meekum brings up, one legitimate argument. I've always said, if you're going to require this access, you need to reference something in your zoning code or your subdivision code. Where's our authority to require this access? And I do think that as part of any subdivision review or PDO, we're looking at access. But essentially the guidance from our code is that, if land is getting subdivided and it's adjacent to residential property, their obligation is to locate the streets so that the adjacent land may be most efficiently subdivided. So it doesn't require that access be provided to every neighboring property. It just requires adequate access for future development of adjacent property. And arguably that provision doesn't even apply because the adjacent property is zoned ag, but we have been using that argument with Symphony is, you need to provide reasonable access for future development. So the streets that they have provided follow our master plan. They're putting in the 400 West, and they're putting in a street from Main Street all the way to the connection to frontage. So I understand that this is a sensitive issue and wanting to provide access. And so I guess that's why staff is just saying it's not really our authority, but if you do require it, it might be that you are waiving the 1,200-foot block requirement, because it is a 13 or whatever, however it is. I know it exceeds the 1,200-foot block length, so they do need a waiver from that code provision. But from a planning perspective, Corey can weigh in, but it does create some conflicts with a agricultural access through a single-family residential area. So those are my thoughts. I'm happy to answer some questions. And as I said, there's been a lot of discussion about this, and the Planning Commission, I will emphasize, did recommend putting the access in between the lots.
Thank you, Lisa. So any other questions for Lisa? She is our legal counsel on this matter.
Corey, do you have any other on the planning end of it?
Wow, put me right on the hot seat. Overall, I'm going to generally support Lisa's argument because I think if it's looking at an element of resolving disputes, a private dispute between property owners, I think Lisa gives you the greatest and sound advice. I do recognize two things in the ordinance for subdividing. One is that we do have a 1,200 foot block length in the subdivision ordinance. This being a PDO, the Planning Commission did debate that block length, and they looked at the 2050 to the south and the potential collector up through the Cutler Old Hall Road, or whatever it's referenced as, is probably going to have a similar long length. And so they chose not to require an additional stub street, particularly from the aspect that they were worried about the distance from 400 West to where you potentially could put a stub street. And it had the potential impact of making the Cutler lots to the north corner lots. So they chose not to go down the road of a 1,200 foot block length, and they did weigh in that the PDO did give them the tool to extend it to the 1,300 feet. There is another provision in the subdivision ordinance. We do have a provision that says any development exceeding 800 feet in block length, the city may require a walkway. And the intended purpose of walkways is for pedestrians to be able to find a way through the different block lengths. You see this down with the detention pond in the old town, and we have a block length that's quite large, and people are cutting through the county detention, and now we've got part of that as a park and part of it is subdivision, and we have a walkway going through that project. And so the walkways are intended to allow people to walk between areas of a development. And I think that's where gets this graying line about this Planning Commission requirement for a farm access. I think the issue of a farm access is a little different than the overall purpose of doing a walkway. And so if we envision a walkway into the future to the development to the north, I think your ordinances do allow you to look at the 800 foot block length and determine where that should be. But if we're couching it as a hidden cloth covering for a farm access, that's where I then lean towards Lisa's argument that we shouldn't be using it to settle a private dispute. So that's a mixed message, but that's the best I can give you.
So to that point, Corey, it sounds like, and I'm just going to use the P word, this sets precedence if we populate this with this. And I understand where you're coming from, Robin, in terms of that there's an applicant promise that's made, but my concern is if we put this in here, we've done pseudo adjudication as to the access before courts or have looked at it. And then what do we do for the next project or property owner that says, yeah, I need you to go ahead and put in an easement. I'm concerned that sets a precedence for us, that we are basically going around the courts on that.
But we didn't ask that. The developer offered it at Planning Commission. And my other concern is I really think we're doing the whole neighborhood a dysfunction as we have this piece of property back there that literally, I've been back there, I've walked it. It is total wetlands. I can't imagine the mosquitoes and problems that would be back there if it wasn't cared for. And so I don't think these people are going to want this in their backyard. If nobody has access to it, nobody's going to be able to take care of it. You know, I'm with Corey. I think that they offered it. And then once again, it isn't just a willy-nilly we're offering it, but they, after 800 feet, they need to have something, and they're going over 1,300. So they're, you know, they're going 500 feet more than what we would allow without a walkthrough or a road. So for me, that would be a point that I would feel very strongly about, that I feel like it needs to be there so that we have access to that property.
Are you saying that if it's not here in the ordinance that it won't be done? Or are you saying that the promise wouldn't be honored? I'm just trying to figure out why having it in here changes that that's already been offered up by Symphony.
Well, I think that's what made our planning commission feel comfortable with passing it on, if you've watched the planning commission. And so that's why I'm feeling that I'd just like to leave it in there. And then, you know, we know that there will be access, and we know we're not going to have 1,300 feet without any break at all. We will have that. So I feel like it isn't anybody can come in out and ask for it, because, you know, we are giving something back by asking for it, by letting them have their 1,300 foot block. Like I said, I think they've done an amazing job working with us. That's my only concern. And my concern is for the neighborhood. I just don't want a piece of land that could become nothing. I guess I don't want this to become another cemetery that we didn't buy the rest of the cemetery, so now we don't have one. I don't want to make that same mistake, and here's this landlocked piece of property 20 years from now. Nobody wants it, nobody takes care of it, and you've got neighbors coming to the city constantly complaining about whatever's coming out of that property into their yards. So I just want to make sure that somebody can get in there to take care of the piece of property. I don't think that the landowner is really getting, I mean, he's getting 12 feet, he's getting access in there, but it's not giving him a roadway for development or anything. So I don't think we're, you know, helping him a lot either. I'm just making sure there is a, and I felt like that the planning commission thought that that was very important also.
George, just FYI, I share your leaning. And so if you were to make a motion as such, I would be in support of that. But I would like to throw it back to the developer and ask if the lot sizes that you've agreed to, if that all still works, if this access were to go in.
So could we make just a couple comments on the access? Number one is we did discuss in that planning commission, and we pledged to work with Spencer Packer to provide an access into his property. But there, you have to be careful, because if you look at that, we also mentioned that we're happy to do that, but it would also involve us settling our issues with them. So we don't just provide an access without kind of settling our other issues with them to make sure that we're happy to cooperate, but we want to make sure that other issues relating to the property and some claims he has get finalized in a final solution, so that we just aren't providing access while leaving all these other issues out there hanging. And so, but we are willing to provide that access. We just want to make sure that we have a chance to clear up any other issues as well as part of that. The lots can be adjusted to handle that access. That's not a problem. The one concern I would have, I'm now thinking, I'm a little, want to be careful how I say this, but I'm thinking of the Cutlers and the Packer property. They may not be developed in the Cutlers or the Packers' lifetime, but at some point long down the road, there's a good chance those properties will get developed. And we now have a pathway, but where does that pathway go? And if you're the Packer property, how does that pathway cut through the Packer property and then over through the Cutler property to have it be meaningful to connect onto 2150 North? And when you cut through all that, what does it do to the future lot layout? And how does that bisect the Packer property and potentially hamper the development of that property? So on the one hand, where we're trying to help Spence with that access, I think that's a good idea. And we want to work with him on that. But on the other hand, I think you want to be careful about the long-term consequence of this decision and how it may impair the development of the Cutler and Packer properties down the road with some random path that just goes through with no plan for it.
I don't think we're requiring it to go on.
Then why would you have us stub it if it wasn't going to be required to go through?
So that somebody can get into
that there'll be a walking path through there?
So that somebody can get onto that property to maintain that property. Like you said, it could be 20, 30 years before that's developed. And I want to make sure that that property, I mean, right now I realize that the person on the bottom and the person on the top are working together, but you know, what if there's a falling out there and they have no access to that top piece of property? That's going to hurt the people whose homes you're building, because they're going to have this piece of property behind them that isn't upkept. That's my concern.
Right. So I just trying to draw the distinction. I think what you're talking about is a farm access easement so that Spencer can access his farm. I think that's a different matter than putting what's officially characterized as a walking path. Would be the walking path to nowhere if it doesn't ultimately connect through to 2150 North, where it's designed to connect the neighborhoods. Then there would be no point to have the walking path, just stub down part of our lots and ultimately terminate. But so I'm trying to get the distinction between what's the intent. Is it a walking path that eventually connects through, or is it a farm easement, a farm access easement?
I guess I'm looking at a farm access. I'm Corey.
I think that's where there's some challenges, but I just want to convey that we have expressed this publicly, and we'll do it again. We are happy to sit down with Spencer. We would like to provide him access to his property. We have no problem with that. We do want to make sure that that access somehow is connected to just the final resolution of our issues so that we don't carry claims forward. And that's all we ask.
Thanks. Thanks. Yeah, I think, Robin, where I'm at, and I know Spence is listening, so I want to make sure Spence understands. We love you, Spence. You're great. You're a fantastic resident here in Centerville. You do a lot for the community, and you have the respect of everyone on the council. I think my concern is that whenever we are acting in an official capacity as elected government officials, we have a duty to make sure that we do not bias disputes between two parties, and where they are private property owners. We can't use, I just feel that it's unethical for us to use our legislative prerogative to potentially bias one property owner over another. Doesn't matter who those two property owners are. And I just don't think that we should be using our authority to potentially create that problem. So that's why I was asking, Robin, if you believe that's still going to exist and that that's going to be granted. I saw the planning commission, and I think I was throwing popcorn at the screen because I thought that was not a great call, because it did. It used an administrative body to potentially bias in favor of one property owner over another. And I just don't think that's appropriate for us to do, because if we do that with this, well, where do we start handling the drainage issues between property owners and forcing one to do something extraordinary because we believe the other party is being disadvantaged? I'm just concerned about it being a slippery slope.
I agree, George. And I want to say, Robin, that I've heard you and I do understand your argument, and I do think it is a legitimate argument. And so it's one of those difficult decisions where you're kind of like weighing, and you have to weigh it out. And the points that George have made just outweigh the point that you made, which is a legitimate point, and I understand what you're saying.
So you don't worry about this piece of property becoming just a wasteland of 1.5 acres stuck in behind all these houses.
Robin, I do, and that's why I just said I heard you, and it's a legitimate point. But the concern that George expressed is a shared concern that I have, and it outweighs this other thing in this situation. And this is what we're called to do, is those tough weighing of, no perfect decision. But George, are you ready to make a motion, or I feel ready
before
to
George
say that.
Yeah,
before George makes a motion, I've got a comment.
Yeah, I was stretching it out so to see if Bill or Stephanie would throw in and give us some of their viewpoints as well.
I'm looking at this access question, and I have not done the research that Robin has. I understand George's comment, but I am reminded very much of property between Dave's Automotive and the Hafoka development, and that property. And it looks to me like we have the current problem there that Robin is trying to make sure doesn't happen here. So we've got a piece of property with a house on it that is in no man's land and isn't properly cared for, and honestly is a pain in the neck to the properties all the way around it. And I think it's important that we not set that stage again.
And I agree with you. I have been. Did we lose you?
No, I'm here.
No, they're here.
Sorry, your mouth was moving and I wasn't hearing anything. That might have been mine. I have been to both of these properties and walked on them, and they're pretty moist, damp properties, and I am concerned. I am concerned because if the only way you can access a property legally and without having the good graces of your next door neighbor at that moment is by helicopter, yes, maybe we can just step up mosquito abatement, but if we were to have an abandoned lot like we had on Chase Lane, where there was trouble for the property owners around, and they were saying, somebody come in and clean this up. If there's no legal way to get in and clean it up, then there's going to be looking to say, who caused this? Who allowed this to become a property that can't legally be accessed? And I don't want to be the one that has to say, me, I caused this. So I realize there are arguments on both sides, and I don't know what the right answer is. I'd love to just say, hey, how about you come work together and buy one of the lots and then it'll solve it all. But I'm not in a position to do that. I'm just in a position to say there has to be some way to get to it so that it doesn't just become this no man's land that we can't access legally.
But
Well,
that's
the
not what-
other
that's
thing,
not- Go ahead, Tammy, sorry.
no, it's okay. Go ahead, George.
I was just saying, but that's not within our legal prerogative to make that happen. They have boundary lines, they have the courts to solve that for them as far as that goes. I guess where I'm at, and I hear the mosquito abatement when I'm smiling, because actually if that became a situation, we do have drones that we could fly a helicopter over to actually do that. That's not my main concern. My main concern would be the same, which is you have a piece of property that is inaccessible. I don't believe that that's the intent for either party, because it would create a lot of heartache between the two parties. But I also believe that there are limitations to what we can do and what we should legally do. That's why I'm saying, let them go with it.
Yeah, I feel strongly about this. And the other thing too is that there are other possible solutions that have been talked about and that actually take care of the concern that we have. What we've said in this conversation is that this subdivision as drawn is creating a landlocked piece of land that will not be usable in the future. And normally when we plan subdivisions, it says in our ordinance to not do that. And I know that, the parties have talked about all the different options. And so if we go in with a condition, it finalizes that discussion and it finalizes from our perspective and from our ordinance's perspective, the less ideal solution. It firms up the problem that our ordinances are trying to avoid. So, thank you. I think.
Well, I think we should motion to bring this to an adoption of the ordinance and then put some edits in it and probably do them line by line edit, just so that we're not trying to wrap them all together. I would motion that we adopt ordinance 2013 with a structural edit to paragraph 5 with the land uses, changing the maximum number of dwellings to 63 dwellings, adding a condition 4, which would be minimum lot size of 5,800 square feet. So those are the two there. And then I would say delete provision 13.
Did you make that edit to change the number from 66 to 63?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, that's the first thing you said? I missed that. Okay, good.
That's line item 5, number 1. He changed that from 66 to 63.
Yeah, and I was just adding a sub bullet 4 under that land use is to say minimum lot size of 5,800.
Yes.
And deleting 13.
So is there a way we can vote on 4, 5, and 13 separately so that we know?
Well, I know 13 is the contentious one. How about we just start with, I leave that one off and we just go with the 63 and 5800, and then we'll go back and do an amendment after that, just so, because I don't think anyone has any issues with those.
So you're gonna make a motion then just with that, George?
Yeah.
Well, George,
Wait,
I don't know, because I feel strongly enough about it that I might not feel comfortable voting. I mean, I feel more comfortable with the way you did it originally, was putting on the table what you think is
Sure.
the best
But why don't we start there?
past finalized. So based on what you stated is what the motion you're putting on the table, I would second that.
Yep. So I'll restate that one more time just for purposes of the recorder, which is that we're changing paragraph 5, single family uses maximum number of dwellings is 63 units, adding a sub bullet 4, which is minimum lot size 5,800 square feet, and then deleting condition for paragraph 13, however we want to call it. So that's the motion as it stands.
Okay, we have a second? Councilor
Tammy already seconded. I was just
Yeah,
restating
I
for the recorder.
seconded that.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
So I would like to come back and ask Lisa, I've heard some things during the day, there's been conversations. It's my understanding you were trying to reach the ombudsman, that there's a difference of understanding about when something creates landlocked property. Did you have that conversation with the ombudsman?
I did talk about landlocked parcels as well as prescriptive easements. You know, I mentioned I'm not aware of a state statute that prohibits a subdivision from creating a landlocked parcel. And he said that he wasn't either, and he thought it was sort of an urban legend. But I think Corey kind of found the answer, because back in 2008, there was some legislation that was run, and it was titled Access to Landlocked Parcels, and it actually prohibited a municipality from approving a subdivision that created or left a landlocked parcel. But that part of the bill did not pass. In the end, the only thing the bill said was that the Ombudsman's office has the authority to advise people as to their rights regarding landlocked parcels. But the one thing I'd like to highlight is that, in my opinion, even if that statute had passed, which it did not, it wouldn't apply in this situation, because it's my legal opinion that this property is already landlocked. Symphony is not creating the landlocked status of this parcel by subdividing their property. And I know the parties disagree. And so I'm just saying that's my opinion, but obviously the courts can say differently. But I think it is an important point. And it's also an important point that the northern side of the property is undeveloped.
When you say the property, what property?
The property to the north of the Packer property is undeveloped.
Okay, you just said the property and I didn't know what property.
Good point. So anyway, I am not aware of a state statute that prohibits cities from approving a subdivision plat that creates a landlocked parcel, but I will say that I fully believe in that premise and that requirement. We shouldn't be creating approving subdivisions that create landlocked parcels. That's not the purpose of planning. That's not the purpose of subdividing. And I believe our ordinance, while I also couldn't find an ordinance provision that prohibits creating landlocked parcels or requiring the city to solve landlocked parcel issues. I think it is the intent of our ordinances to provide reasonable access when you're developing a subdivision, but it gives the city that discretion in looking at what our master plan says about streets. It doesn't obligate us or the developer to provide access to every adjacent property. So even think of Woods PDO, we provided access to an adjacent parcel because they needed a secondary access, not necessarily because it was required. But it's good planning practice. I agree. We don't want to create landlocked parcels, but my position is it's already landlocked. So we're not creating that.
Lisa, didn't we require Brighton Homes to put an access up into where Ace is so that that road can go in sometime? On that deal?
Yeah, there's an access easement that if that develops residential, and that's where, you know, that is what our ordinance says. If the adjacent property is zoned residential, then provide for reasonable future access. And so, again, you know, I think that it is a planning question that we can ask ourselves and the city council can consider. I just want to make sure that you're not providing the access because you want to solve this private dispute. I don't think that's our position. If you think it's, you know, good planning or that it's required because of our master streets plan, something like that, but it's really not even a street, it's just a farm access, so.
And if we're stating that the intent is to prevent a landlocked piece, my point is that by finalizing this argument through a city document, an ordinance, then we are essentially guaranteeing it will be landlocked because we're giving it the access to stay a landlocked piece as it is. Does that make sense?
Not at all.
No.
I think
what I kind of see, and I'm not sure I don't agree with that. And I was going to ask Russ Wilson, let's say this stays in and that you provide the 12-foot access, and then at some future date, 15 years from now, just for a supposition, there's development of a portion of the Cutler property, and Spence Packer decides, yeah, good time, and he joins them, and so those two properties are joined in a future development. Now, what happens to this 12-foot access?
So we've thought about that a lot, and what we would again propose is, again, this is a private matter, so it's hard to do it in this public setting, but what we would propose is to give Mr. Packer access to his property through an easement. That easement would remain until such time as 400 West was extended north, and at such time as he and Cutler decided to develop their properties. We believe this property is not landlocked because there are potentials to both the west and the north to access this property in the future. We're not the only access to it. But we would provide this temporary access until such time as 400 West was extended north, and more permanent access was created. And then at such time that easement would be vacated and go to the lot owner. But again, we'd ask that in granting this and cooperating, that we would have a chance to sit down with Mr. Packer and make sure that there is a resolution to the issues relating to access and easements and right-of-ways. That it's all collectively solved, so that we're not just solving his problem. We're happy to solve his problem, but we want to make sure that in turn back, his claims against us get solved as well. It's a full workout of all those issues.
And that kind of then, in my mind, smells more and more like George's analysis, that we just got involved in adjudicating the issue.
So then you get to put your own cheese and your whiskey.
I'm sorry?
I don't think that was any of us, Councilman. Okay, is there any further discussion on it before we vote? I want you to be content and to have your understanding. Those are very good questions and a very good discussion.
So help me understand. You're saying that staff is recommending eliminating number 13 and saying the two property owners are going to go work it out themselves. And the city should be happy with that and assume that somehow it's going to work out and we won't have a disaster that we later have to come back and try to resolve.
a little bit of that. I think that staff is recommending that it come out because it is a private property matter. I don't think they're saying one way or another whether it's going to get resolved or not. I mean, we've heard from all the parties talk about what their issues are, but it does really become a private property matter. And as Tammy's saying, if we leave this in there, we're solving it the wrong way. We're creating a bigger problem. So as much as I would like to, think that's in our purview, it certainly is tough for us to put that in there. I think the planning commission was trying to make everyone satisfied with the situation. I would love to do the same thing, but from a pragmatic standpoint, I can't. I just can't live with the decision to put my thumb on the scale for one property owner over another when we know that there's an active dispute between the property owners that is it's likely to end up in court. That's just the way that's going to run. But that's what that's for. So it is tough, Stephanie.
Help me understand this. What precedent did we set with having Brighton Homes stub and access to ACE? Because that's not a zoned residential.
But we said that in the edits we made to the plan, we said that we were signaling that would likely go residential. If we put in a farm access.
But if we say that the Packer property is likely to go residential too.
But if we say that and we put in a farm access, that's backwards. We can't say we signal that it's residential, but we don't provide the access that's adequate for residential use. So the arguments, that's the problem, they kind of cancel each other out.
So we should say, we don't want you to have as long a 1,300 foot block, and we'd like you to stub in an additional road because we think the Packer property is going to go residential.
Corey's just jumped on. Let's see what our professional planner wants to add.
Well, I wanted to go to the earlier matter of what did we do with Brighton Homes. That was setting up future development because the city has an interest in eliminating the number of accesses on Pages Lane. And so we use the PDO and that access to have a joint access for the potential for the future. So we reduce the number of curb cuts because there are plenty of curb cuts along that street. And so we were trying to decrease the number of curb cuts in our interest with that PDO. So we were not taking a position with one property owner or another. We were taking a position of the city's best interest for access.
But didn't that work to disadvantage to some slight degree Brighton Homes because they then had to provide a stub for a road where they wouldn't have had to otherwise?
No, because we could have taken away the other access that they wanted. So we were minimizing the number of accesses between all of the development. So we did it, for lack of better terms, for our own interest. It wasn't based on an ordinance. It wasn't based on providing future access. You could argue future access to residential, but in all stark reality, we had a chance for a PDO and we had multiple curb cuts, and we wanted to eliminate as many of those curb cuts as we could as development occurs in the future.
What you're saying, Corey, is that if the ACE property, all of a sudden they decide to sell it and convert it to residential, they'll be entering through the existing curb cuts and they won't have another one on Pages Lane.
Correct.
That makes sense. I can see the difference between the two.
And I guess my frustration is I feel bad that we're looking at this person and this person because I don't feel like I'm doing anything for or against either one. My only concern is a landlocked piece of property for the people that are going to be living there. So I'm not doing this to benefit anybody, but yet it comes across that way because I guess he wants, a farm access or a road or whatever. I just want to make sure there's some access to that property for the people whose backyard are going to go up against that.
Yeah, and Robin, I'm not interpreting what you're saying as trying to give advantage to one party over another. I'm just being as passionate as I can and just looking at it as what's the limitation of my role. And in this specific case, I think we are very limited in what we can do. And so that's why I've taken the position I have. And again, it's not that I'm putting developer against small property owner or small property owner over developer. I'm looking at it as I have two adjacent property owners who are equally entitled to their opinion in a court of law who will decide that. And I'm not a court.
So can I go into that mess and understand a little? So suppose that this passes tonight, then the property owners go to court and nothing happens with the development until it's been worked out? Is that?
No,
I mean, I'm not understanding how the resolution takes place.
Where's
maybe
the attorney?
Well, the development moves ahead. The two property owners need to work it out between themselves.
So Corey, do we have other developments that violate the 1,200 foot block?
Yeah, that's what the planning commission looked at, and they started looking at the roadways, the two roadways to the south. And they looked at those distances that are over 1,200 feet and said, there is a traditional precedence in the north area to go longer blocks. And so they felt comfortable that the PDO waiver of that block length was consistent with the northwest neighborhood.
To me, Bill, the block length, granting that and getting a lower density than what we're even looking for as our low density, to me, that's a great thing. So I'm willing to give that up to get that lower density.
I don't dispute that in the least because our density is less than 4.
Yeah, and that for the public is listening, that's important because everyone's looking and saying 63, but over the project, it's lower than our density requirements. So it's awesome. I think it's a fantastic situation for us. So Steph,
I agree. It's almost a fantastic situation for us. There are a lot of things I really love about this project. And maybe it's because I'm a mom and I know that where there are hard feelings and they aren't resolved at the time that it's all open, then everything festers and gets worse and everybody around gets sucked into it. And I hate to set that up, and I hate to have the opportunity of having a property where people are going to come and say, city, deal with this mess that's in my backyard because nobody can access it.
But you're taking the position, Stephanie, that these parties won't work it out. And that we have to take this action because they're not going to work it out. And I don't, that's part of what I'm making as far as that argument. If they can't work it out without this being in the ordinance, then this thing is broken and we shouldn't have passed this ordinance because then we just force the decision. See, that's where it keeps coming around in a circle for me, is if we believe that these parties can actually come to some sort of civil resolution to the dispute, whether that's in court or out of court, then this isn't needed either way from our perspective, from a city perspective, because they're going to resolve it. But if we believe they're not going to resolve it, and that's the justification for keeping it in there, we're still wrong. That's why I just feel very strongly that that piece needs to come out. Let those parties work one with each other and come to a resolution that does not require the city to force an answer for them. That's really what it boils down to, and it is tough because you don't want to see parties that already go into things with a preconception of how they expect it to come out or their belief of their rights, and that is a tough situation. But I do believe in this particular case we have to maintain our distance and stay within our legislative authority and not intervene on a property matter like this.
I think we're at the point, unless anybody else has any discussion on this, that we need to vote on it. So any other last concerns before I start a roll call vote? Okay, is everybody still aware of the motion on the table and understand it?
And this is just a single vote with the current proposed ordinance and 3 changes to it.
Correct.
So this will be taking 13 off if we vote for this. If not,
Yes,
then
and adding 63 to the 66 and adding the 5,800 square foot lot.
Right.
Okay. All right, let's vote. Councilwoman Fillmore,
Aye.
Councilwoman Ivy,
A,
is that a nay?
that's an A.
Okay. Councilman Ince,
Aye.
Councilwoman Meekum,
nay.
and Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
So that motion passes 3-2. Thank you. Good discussion. It's a tough one. I think that from the standpoint of the city and what legal we should be doing, that it's a tough one, but we're doing what is with our rights. And my hope to Symphony and to Spence Packer, they can get this worked out. I would hope that they could do that. So thank you.
And I
Thank
agree with
you.
what you know, I just like to say that I think I do want Symphony to know that I do appreciate all the work they did, and I do think they came up with an excellent plan. Like I said, I'm just concerned about a blank piece of property, but other than that, I don't want them to think I'm against their development, because I think they listened to the citizens and did a better job than most of the developers we deal with.
I'd agree with that.
I would agree with that as well. Although I did vote for it. So.
And Symphony, I know this started about a year ago at this time when we first had one of our meetings, and you're looking for just a zoning change from ag to residential. And you were willing to step back and look at doing the PDO and listening to the city and the citizens, and we really appreciate that. You spent a lot of time coming up with that. You listened 4 weeks ago, and you made these adjustments to the major concerns that you heard from the residents, and we really appreciate it as well. So thank you for working with us. We look forward to continued well-built homes like you have a reputation for. So thank you.
I would like to make one follow-up comment, and I probably inappropriate. Lisa may poke me next time she sees me. I am still very concerned about water and standing water, and we need to make absolutely certain that we don't have a recreation of what we have on 4th West.
Well, and Bill, to that point, that's why, when we entered into this process, we wanted to have a PDO that ensured a good drainage system. We're taking them at their word and their designs to do that. And, my admonition to Symphony is we have asked in I would say a nice, gentle way that you be respectful of the other property owner, that the two of you work it out in an amicable fashion as soon as you can, because none of us want to see this fester. And you saw our debate as to what our limitation is, but that doesn't mean we can't say we'd really like it solved and that everybody's happy at the end. So please do what you can to work with Spence and Spence likewise, and hopefully you do reach a decision and you all are still friends at the end of it.
We hope so too. That's what we hope for.
Thank you so much. And Councilman Ince, you're fortunate that we're in a Zoom meeting. She can't poke you right now. So thank you, everyone. All right. Let's move.
Thanks, Lisa.
Let's move to item number 2. Lisa, were you going to say something?
No, I'm in favor of resolving the drainage issue as well. So I wouldn't even have poked Bill if I could have.
Okay, good to know.
This time. Yes, our next agenda item is a storm drain easement. Justin Manning I think he's on the line, and we'll give him an opportunity here in a minute, but he has recently received site plan approval for Extreme Auto over on the west side on property owned by Jed Taylor. And as a condition of the final site plan approval, he is required to provide an additional storm drain easement so we can make some upgrades to the storm drain line on Jed Taylor's property. So we've prepared an easement to this effect, and staff recommends that you approve this new storm drain easement. And if the applicant would like to speak to it, he's welcome. Again, Justin Manning, and this does not require a public hearing.
Applicant, you there? Thank you. Justin.
I am.
Welcome.
Yeah, actually, no comment at all. Staff has been very helpful with this particular project, and yeah, just getting this in and upgrading that line is just fine. And so anyway, so no comment. So you can proceed.
Thank you, Justin. Any questions, council, from for Lisa or Justin? If not, do we have a motion on this one?
I would be willing to make a motion that we approve. Let me see what are. What in the heat have I done to myself? That we approve the storm drain easement for Extreme Auto, 606 North, 1000 West.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. Further discussion? Roll call vote. Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
Councilwoman Ivy.
Aye.
Councilman Ince.
Aye.
Councilwoman Meekum.
Thank you.
Aye.
And Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Let's go to item number 3 on our agenda. This is personnel policies amendment. Lisa, do you want to take that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. A month or two ago, we adopted and codified our personnel policies, and as part of that process, I promised we would be bringing back a few amendments. And first on the project list was creating a new chapter 16, which we reserved for addressing separations from employment with the city. I've wanted to have one of these chapters for a while just to sort of address the different types of termination, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, as well as addressing and preparing a reduction in force policy. So I'm proposing a new chapter 16, and I just wanted to highlight a couple things. I think the voluntary terminations is sort of self-explanatory. We did take this chapter to the department heads, and I received some really good input from them. So I want to thank them for that. You know, sometimes I just prepare things with a single eye and protecting the city/employer, but I think the department heads brought up some good points as well to protect the employees. Although a lot, you know, some of the provisions in here are also favorable to the employees. But one thing was we did reduce, typically you require employees to give you 2 weeks notice if they want to resign. And we did agree as the department heads and city manager to just encourage employees to give us 2 weeks. We had a good debate about why sometimes we may not want 2 weeks even on our end. Anyway, in 16.020, we're just encouraging them to give us 2 weeks notice. And then involuntary terminations, I don't know if you want to bring up the ordinance, we can follow along, but I also added a provision here on constructive termination, which basically in the law just means that someone was essentially pushed out, perhaps for not legal reasons, and they were forced to resign. So I just put something in here about that you should consult with the city attorney if, you know, if you're really pushing someone out, so that we're making sure we're protecting the employees' due process rights. Retirement, the department heads also had a good point. We did have in here that the employee needed to give us 3 months notice of retirement, but now we've just said that we encourage employees to provide 30 days notice of retirement, because really it's in their best interest to work with URS. It does take about 3 months, but anyway, we agreed on that. And then the next, oh, thank you. So then we have a provision on just reclassifying employees. And then the next one really was something that started this whole chapter, which is making sure that we have a reduction in force policy. And Brant and I worked on this quite a bit. We looked at a lot of other policies from other cities, and, you know, nearby as well as nationally. And, you know, you can have a reduction in force policy that's a couple sentences and or 5 pages. So I kind of took a process in the middle. I think this is a fair policy. I think that anytime an employer wants to do a reduction in force, that it really needs to be for a business need. And so I've put in here some safeguards that we actually have to come up in writing with a written determination by the city manager as to why there's a business related circumstances needed for the reduction in force. And then also some of the information acknowledge that it's best to the extent you can is to keep employees informed. So we do have in here a provision that says we'll try to give employees, 7 days notice, but we're not obligated. And then I also put in some criteria for determining who's going to be subject to the reduction in force. And the first one obviously is emergency, temporary, and probationary employees should be laid off first, not our full-time employees. And then I did put in here, I'm suggesting and recommending that we actually put in a provision that if we have more than one person in the same position, that we can look at their performance evaluations and actually have some discretion in determining if we have a non-performer, that we can let that non-performer go. But if ability is equal, then we will fall upon the standard typical reduction in force criteria, which is seniority. But I think this is a good balance, sort of moving away from the strictly seniority criteria. And we're much better off if we already have a policy in writing saying this is the way we're going to do it. So that's a significant policy during these times. I put in an outsourcing provision, and we debated whether to have this or not. It's not pleasant to think about, but I do think that there may be some times that the city might have to do that. And we even have a provision regarding death of an employee. I think if you look at all these criteria over the past 10 years, we've probably had an example of each one. But this is sort of a softer criteria, just, trying to help the employee understand that we will work with them and work with their family to make sure that they're notified of any death benefits provided under the Utah retirement system and other things, and that we'll work with them to get any paperwork necessary. So, and then the other section that we debated was the return of city property. We'd like to have a more formalized approach, and I think the department heads agreed that they were the probably the most appropriate position to kind of review, because each department is different what needs to be returned, but they will prepare a final checklist that goes to the finance department. So there's a double check on returning all of the city property and passwords and credit cards. We've already created a form that will address all of that as well. So with that, I know that was kind of a lengthy description, but I think this will be helpful both for the city and the employees to have a chapter in our personnel policies that talks about, when we're going to sever the employment relationship. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Lisa, one thing I noticed that was missing is we don't define job abandonment as a termination in here.
You mean like if they don't show up for work for 3 days?
Correct, and they make no attempt to notify you or otherwise that's actually their termination date, backdates to the date of abandonment. That may have happened, but that is a condition I have seen where employees just disappear and that's their notice. They just don't show up again.
Yeah, I've seen that in policies, and I'd probably want to look into it further just to look at the pros and cons of having that. I guess you're right. It's in the city's benefit if we say, hey, if you don't show up for your job for 5 days, you're terminated. But I don't know.
Well, not necessarily that that's automatic, but the option exists. Where it gets fuzzy on the HR side is, let's say they don't show up for 2 weeks and you finally call them and say, well, you're not dead and you weren't on vacation. Where were you? Well, I quit. Their termination date is back to the date that they didn't report. So that's the mechanism I've seen used to at least to help that one out.
Okay.
One other question on Cobra. I guess my only concern with this, and either you or Brant could weigh in or both, is that this is pretty open-ended. Most Cobra also says that it puts a limitation on what the maximum entitlement is, or gives the formula for if you're an employee, this is the maximum you're going to get out of the city on Cobra. And maybe we cover that in separation benefits somewhere else, but.
Yeah, I didn't want to get into Cobra too much because there are a lot of provisions and I could probably add 5 more pages on Cobra. So you're right, it's very vague, but my understanding is that we rely upon the, very much on our health provider, but I could look at some of those details. I guess in my opinion, it's very much determined by the federal regulations, what they're eligible for.
Well,
yeah, I agree with that, Lisa. And they may shift or change, and we don't want to continually update our personnel policy manual with that. So
sure, that's fine. I see the point there. I'm just looking at it. If you're offering severance or Cobra as a combined component of the severance package, that there has to be some sort of upward limitation just so that you know where you're at on that, or at least it seems that way. And then the last point I have was in the Americans with Disabilities and Medical Termination or Long-Term Disability. The case I've seen on that is individuals who get to a point of termination, and then at that point they disclose at the termination, well, I have ADD, or I have PTSD, or I have some other qualifying condition that would be considered something that should be accommodated, but has never been revealed to the employer. So they've never qualified their disability with the city until the point of termination. So I don't know how you want to, hopefully we never have that. I have seen that firsthand, where individuals turn their performance issues into, well, I have an undisclosed disability and I didn't know I had to disclose it, but now that you're firing me, I'm telling you now that I have this disability and you can't fire me because of it.
Mm-hmm. And I've probably been working more with the FMLA recently, but, and I'm not certain if the ADA has this, but under the FMLA, it's if the city knew or should have known. So I don't know if we have that same obligation if we knew or should have known that they had a disability. I guess there might be some disabilities that we didn't know about, but if they're not performing their job.
Because my understanding on it is if you're going to qualify under ADA with a qualifying condition, it has to be disclosed to the employer so they can make reasonable accommodation. And that's at least my understanding on that, is that if you have not made reasonable accommodation and you're terminating due to your lack of reasonable accommodations, for example, ramp or whatever that is, then they have cause to come back against the city. So those are my comments.
So George, does the state have such a provision that we could copy or piggyback?
I'm sure we probably have a couple things at the state that might be useful for that.
I've been in the middle of one of those in the past, and it can't even be just disclosed to a coworker who discloses that disability to the city. It's got to be disclosed by the employee. And I have been in the middle of a termination of an employee in a previous employer, and EEOC was involved, and ultimately the city prevailed because it wasn't disclosed properly. I recall if we had the language that protect us though. And so I'll have to look into that as well.
Yeah, and since this is designed to lay out the relationship between the city and the employee and vice versa, I just think in this one we should strengthen so they know that going into that's not a situation where the city's trying to do a gotcha. Again, we'll probably never need it, but at least we'll have it so that they know what the disclosure terms are.
Hopefully we never need it.
I hope we don't either.
I guess I had one question, Lisa.
Mhm.
In the reduction of force, should that be clarified that prioritization is on a departmental basis? It's hard to take somebody from the finance department and move them over to public works or vice versa. So those determinations have to be made departmentally.
Well, the way it's drafted is that the city manager actually has to look at a number of objective factors and determine what's in the best interest of the city. So let me look what section it is. Oh yeah, so it's subsection F. In determining which positions to eliminate as part of a reduction in force, the city manager should determine which positions, if eliminated, would have the least impact on the city and the least effect on the delivery of services for the most important municipal services. So the city manager would be looking citywide. And then if the city manager said, oh, well, I'm not going to name a department, but this department, then he'll probably look into that. I mean, we have had a reduction in force in the justice court when we digitized things and, reduced paperwork and things like that. So I think it does allow, but I wouldn't want to mandate a department by department analysis.
Councilman Branch, your point is taken. I agree with you. I mean, you can't move a streets employee over to police, right? There's certifications that are required in what you're being discussed. But I do feel there needs to be some flexibility in this section because you might be able to transition administrative staff between departments. Or you might actually be consolidating duties or job responsibilities because one duty or job responsibility might be less than what it used to be. And so you can combine and keep that employee. So I think there needs to be some flexibility in that, but of course there's the certifications that prevent you from some department positions, some department specific positions.
Okay, as I read it, that was one of the thoughts that hit me.
That's great.
Sorry if I misunderstood the question. This isn't something that has any kind of time crunch. So if you'd like to table it, I can look into the suggestion on the abandonment of job provision and also the ADA issue about notifying us of a disability. And I'm happy to bring some suggested changes back to you or any other suggestions that you have.
Is it worth approving it just that and then asking you to report on those to us and we could make a minor change?
Yeah, either way, we can approve it and I can bring back some amendments, or you can table it and I'll bring those back.
As far as I'm concerned, that's up to you and Brant.
I would lean towards approving it tonight and then you can do the research and if you want to recommend those other changes, but we don't necessarily have to have it on another agenda if you end up not wanting to recommend those changes.
Okay.
You want to make that motion then, Councilwoman Fillmore? Or is that the motion?
Yeah, just trying to look up where we are. So that would be, I move to approve resolution number 2020-33, amending the personnel policies to add a new chapter 16.
Second.
Separations.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilwoman Fillmore, second by Councilwoman Ivy. Let's do a roll call vote on that. Councilwoman Ivy.
Aye.
Councilman Nintz.
Aye.
Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye.
And Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0. So Lisa, you've been commissioned to as you heard, make those changes in it and then inform us that took place.
Okay, I think Yeah, my understanding was I'll work with Councilmember McEwen on some of his concerns and suggestions. And yeah, if we want to make some amendments, I'll probably bring something back to you if needed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the next item is the appointment of city recorder. And Brent, do you want to handle this? Anything to say on it, or you want me to go ahead?
Oh, I'm good. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I would like to say something on this. So Janet Dennison, who you've met briefly before the meeting, has been doing a phenomenal job. The great thing is she has previous experience, even if it is back east where they do things a little wonky. She's doing a great job. She's asking the right questions. I'm just really excited to work with her. I've gotten to know her quite a bit over the past week. Like I said, she's on it. There's a lot going on, and we do things a little differently here, and we use different terminologies than they do back east. But honestly, she's picking it up pretty quick, and I appreciate Mackenzie, who's also on this, has agreed to continue to help train Janet a little bit more, so she'll be up to speed. Mackenzie's great at training. She did a great job with Leah. But Janet's doing phenomenal. I encourage you to get to know her a COVID-safe way, whatever that might be. But we'll try and do something for her in the near future where you can get to know her a little bit more on a personal level. Roger, I got to meet Roger tonight as well, her husband. Great guy. We're excited to get to know him as well. And that's all I have right now, Mayor.
I would make the resolution that we approved, or I would make a motion that we approve resolution 2020-32, appointing Janet Dennison as the new city recorder.
I'll second that.
We have a motion, a second. Roll call vote. Councilman Fillmore.
Aye.
Councilman McEwen.
Aye. It didn't work the first time when I unmuted it.
Councilwoman Ivy.
Aye.
Councilman Ince.
Aye.
And Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0. Robin, remind us what you guys are called back where Janet came from. Do you remember?
Trying to remember now. I can't remember.
Selectmen.
Selectmen.
Yeah, selectmen.
Selectmen. There you go. Okay.
Selectmen.
Thank you, Janet. Welcome. We're thrilled to have you. And I know that you're working hard and furious, and they're very conscientious, as I observed today when I was at the city briefly. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, let's go to summary action calendar. On our summary action calendar, we have a couple of things. We have, oh, sorry, let's
We're
not skip
skipping number
CARES Act
5.
discussion.
Okay.
The CARES Act discussion. CARES Act funding discussion, as you know, Brett brought this up briefly at the end of our last meeting, that we have some dates that we need to look at as far as what we need to do with our CARES money. And Jacob, you came on the screen, so are you talking or is Brent talking?
I think we both are. That's the discussion.
Okay, you both are. Go for it.
Okay, well, let me just give a brief summary. First of all, let's talk about those dates. I've gotten some clarification from the governor's office. We need to be obligated to spend whatever we're going to spend on CARES Act money by November 30th. And we do actually have to have the labor completed or whatever it is that we've purchased by December 30th. The exception to that is if there is some kind of supply chain issue, some kind of delay, as long as originally the agreement was that we would have it done or received by December 30th. If it does go beyond that date, all we need is a letter or an explanation from whoever the supplier or the contractor is, explain why it's going to go beyond December 30th. So those are our dates. Now, we are receiving an email probably tomorrow from the governor's office about how we can extend that November 30th date of when we can encumber whatever we're spending, but still the December 30th date does not change of when it has to be completed. So does that make sense, everybody? Okay. All right. So those are our dates that we're working with. Brant, if you want to share that screen again, we have a spreadsheet that we put together that summarizes what we've spent so far, with the CARES Act money, and what we anticipate spending, giving you that total.
All right, let me share the other screen, Jacob. Okay. I pulled up the Excel one. Let me share the PDF one.
Okay. There we go. So we've lumped this into categories, makes it easy. This is how we would do it if there was an audit. We'd let them know that these are our classifications that we have for the areas that we spent. PPE, you know what that is. That's the protective equipment. We anticipate we're going to use about 2,000 more of that just because we're using up what we bought. So we're going to have a little bit more that we're going to need to get before December 30th. Our at-home workstations, so you understand what that is. That would be Surface Pros mainly. There's also iPads and some laptops that are in there, depending what the employee already has or what they need for their position. That also includes, our licensing. It includes screen protectors, keyboards. If they need it, a monitor, a keyboard, and a dock for at home, just so it's more ergonomic for them to work from home. And that's what we have. So there's that about 72,000 that we spent so far. We're anticipating about 32,000 more. Employees are coming forward and saying, I need this, I need that. That also includes some tough books for the police officers. That remaining 32,000, that's the majority of what's left there.
Let me interject real quick, Jacob, if I could. And just to help you understand, is all these items have been created, documented on asset management. So we know what each employee has, serial number, all of that has been documented, and we're keeping sheets so we know what is at home and we can track it. One of the items where Jacob just discussed is tough books. We discovered that our tough books are relatively old. We upgraded them to Windows 10 and found out they're 32-bit, and so they really had a tough time dealing with that. And we feel this was a CARES Act related expense, so we just purchased 11 new tough books for $30,000. Our police department also is seeing an increase. We have been significantly behind in the technology world for some years, and fortunately we're able to catch up and also make it convenient that employees could work from home if things do shut down in the future. So it may seem like a lot, but in all honesty, when we're talking about 35, 40 Surface Pros, tough books, I actually think we did a pretty good job. We did price shop, just so you're aware. Lisa Bednarz did a great job reaching out to 3 different vendors and getting the best price. Equipment was tough to find in some areas, but Lisa did a great job. Lisa Bednarz did a great job finding the equipment we needed.
All right. Well, I don't know if I need to, we have some more things on here. We have the lobby modifications, just so you know, that includes also the Public Works lobby. Back when Randy put in the new window that was on the vestibule, that's there. This is also on the moving of the administrative office and all the related expenses with getting that all fixed up. That's also including the touchless automatic system for the front doors. It just includes that system. It does not include the doors themselves, since we had originally planned to have that for a different reason. So that's what's in the lobby modifications. City Hall modifications.
So how are we going to get that done in the next 40 days or 50 days?
The last thing that we have left to do with this is actually receive the glass. And we've been told we will receive it by the end of December. If we don't, it's a supply issue and we're covered. We're fine that way. So our contractor is Keith Salmon. He's assured us that it will be done by that time. Okay. There isn't actually a whole lot left to do. It's mainly that glass putting across the lobby. We've put but what do they call it? Sneeze guards up for now, temporary sneeze guards, so it's open, that front lobby. Bathrooms, HVAC, that's just more touchless, as well as the ionizers on all 3 buildings for the HVAC system. Council chambers is going to be, some of the modifications that we need to do to separate the council, use the cameras to be more interactive and allow people to participate more, as well as the council from home, if things are shut down and until we get back to having in-person meetings. Signage was some of the stuff that we had to put up around the city, mainly for closing the playgrounds. Administrative, legal, we do have to do a single audit, and that's primarily what this cost is for the single audit with our CPA firm.
I thought that was park related, not COVID.
No, this one is related to COVID. That is because of COVID, we have to do the single audit. It put us over the $750,000 threshold.
The grant for the park was less than the threshold of 750,000, but since we're using CARES Act funding for the previous fiscal year, that puts us over the threshold, and the guidance is clear that we can use the funds for a single audit.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we have the district agreements. We talked about that. I think it was in September.
Remind me what that is?
That was providing funding for PPE for the fire, mosquito abatement, and the rec district.
Okay.
40,000 of that is for fire. And then here's the one that we could talk about a little bit more if we want to. With there's the police and IT related wages. So you see that. So this just includes the frontline employees, and it's their wages, FICA, and URS contributions. And so that first amount that you see there, the 324,194, that was last year's FY20, and you'll see that in the CAFR. And then we have the anticipated, some of it we have, and then of course the estimate until December 30th, that remaining 605,000. And then here's the other one.
Why would most of that 600 not be in the year to date?
That 600? Well, yeah, there is, but there's still a month and a half that we're not quite sure what, but that's pretty close, that number, 605,640.
But why would it not be part of the year to date?
The intent of that, Councilmember Rance, it is year to date, but we're just trying to bifurcate the two to show the difference in the fiscal years.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, year to date, it's going to be much higher, but we're just showing what has been encumbered in the previous fiscal year. This will be the current fiscal year, 605,000.
Yeah. So year to date.
So are all of these numbers?
No, it's just
fiscal year 20 and current fiscal year.
No, they're all year to date except for that police and IT related wages. So that number is probably closer to 550, and they anticipate it would probably be 100. So I apologize for that. Yeah, you're right. So that would be the difference there. Now the fire district personnel, we didn't do anything for the prior year, but for this year, the way this one is figured out, and talking with the accountant over the fire district, we have our assessment, and our assessment is 7.3% of the total budget within the fire district. And so this 304,244 is 6 months of 7.3% of the fire district's budget, if that makes sense.
So some of these items are going to be substantially one time. But for example, that fire district number is going to repeat for the next 6 months. Won't be the same because the 304 would include the last half of fiscal year 20.
Well, this is only for the 6 months. This is only from July 1st to December 30th. Really, it's 608,000 is what we're paying out of our 900 and something thousand assessment for personnel. So this is just 6 months, that 304. And of course, that's an estimate. 304 is probably high, just letting you know that, because this is all of their personnel. And we probably shouldn't be including, just like we do with the police, we shouldn't be including the chiefs and their administrative staff. It should just be the front line, the firemen and the paramedics. And so when the time comes for us to account for that, I will need to get a detail from the fire district, just like we do with ours, by person, their hours, their wages, and everything else that was spent for them. So we have that actual accurate number. But obviously we can't do that until January. So
what I don't understand is that the COVID costs in the fire department started in March.
Yes. I'm just talking about
is the 304 from whatever date in March through December 31, Or is it from July 1 through December 31?
July 1.
July 1 to December 30th.
So are we not attempting to recover for the March 1 to July to June 30?
There's no need to do that, Councilmember Inns, based on if you know, Jacob's getting to this, but the total CARES Act money we received is $1,514,517. Based on the total of the items in the classifications above is $1,703,843.46, with a difference of just less than $190,000. So there's no need to really calculate that previous fiscal year because we already meet.
Because we've already exceeded.
Correct. So there's a number of ways we can do this, Councilmember Ince, and that's what we can talk to you about, and council can have input on this. Any items that the police, and I'll tell you now that I'm very clear that we do have the authority and the ability to use these funds for public safety payroll. I will tell you that there are many cities in our own county are using it this way. The guidance is clear from the OIG, the Office of the Inspector General for the Treasury Department, in that public safety, it's almost a carte blanche. Look, we get it. We think you should use it for public safety, whatever that might be. And they've, in fact, one city just reported to me, they passed their audit by using it this way. And I think it's a great use of the funds. What that does, and I've stated this before, is that $929,000 in the police and IT related wages. What that does is we were anticipating spending that money in the current budget. My proposal would be is that we take those funds and move it into a Fund 48. What did we decide there, Jacob?
I think it's gonna be a 43.
So we're moving into a reserve account essentially and setting it aside. One of the challenges we have here in Centerville is our reserve accounts are not built up. And we really need to start creating those rainy day funds or money even to be set aside for future capital improvement projects. For example, if we had some funds set aside and we want to do pickleball courts, we would have the money to pay for that project and not bond for it or finance it. We don't even have the ability to maintain our reserves are, well, I don't know what they are right now, Jacob, minus the CARES Act, but I think it was around 14-15%. And
it's about 24.
Well, with the CARES Act funding.
Without, it was this last year we did really well.
So yeah, so nonetheless, we really need to start building up those reserves. And my proposal is to put these funds aside until we clear an audit. And because again, just in case the federal government says we want that money back, I don't want to be dipping into our current reserves to pay it. So don't spend any of this money. We set it aside and we allow it to accrue interest, and we just have it for a rainy day and have it there for the future. Now, again, we could do that with the fire district personnel as well. So we add in another 304,000. We can also take that 1.2 million and put into the reserves. Our proposal is not that. Our proposal is the $929,000, and then whatever that difference is, 304,000 minus the 189,000 to meet the 1514. That goes into our reserves, because all of those classifications up, prior to those, the PPP down to the district agreements qualify under the CARES Act funding. And so we'll use the CARES Act funding to help build up our technology and whatever those items might be. And then we take 1.2 million and put into our reserves for future projects and build up our reserves. Now, if council so wants to, there's other projects, Councilmember Ince, I loved your list and brainstorming. If council so wishes to use these funds for some of those items on the list you had proposed, that's great. We just need to remove the strings attached from the CARES Act, and this council has that ability and the authority to, and discretion to use those funds as they see fit without any strings attached. So let's first move them into the reserves, and then we can decide how they're used in the future. But the projects listed could be challenged or meet the requirements of the grant or the funds. Does that make sense? I did a lot of talking there.
No, that makes sense. I'm okay.
So this is our proposal, and Jacob, I think that's, again, you could show that we are over $189,000, but my proposal would be reduce that 304,000 to the 115,000 or so to make it even with the 1,514,000.
So bottom line, we've spent all the money. That's what I report back to the state, and we won't be giving any back to the state.
Brent, do you hear of other cities that are giving any back?
Oh, no. I mean, honestly, at this point, with the ability to use it on public safety, it's clear. I mean, every one of my cohorts, we send out emails to each other. We've got Google Docs out there. Public safety is it. Our conversation with our county is, again, just that, public safety. And, you know, they also have correctional officers as well as the Davis Behavioral Health. So they're easily going to spend the funds. So yeah, with the ability to use it on public safety, every city that is aware of that ability will be using it for that I'm aware of.
And Councilman Eds, as I talk with other mayors in Davis County, I'm not hearing of any going back either.
Okay.
So Brent and Jake, we've received all our tranches then, right?
Yeah. So that 1.5 million, that's it. That's what we're receiving.
That third tranche that I mentioned, we received 89% of it. There was 11% removed that went to other cities that the state determined were impacted a little bit more by COVID. But we received the bulk of it.
Right.
And I believe we're the only state, and I'll state it again, the only state, I believe, in the country that our state actually shared the entire 45% with the cities and counties. Not every state did that. So grateful for the state for sharing, allowing us to also participate and up our technology. Really, that was the big focus here, is upgrading our technology.
Okay. Does this require a resolution?
No resolution. Just wanted to bring this before you.
I mean, there will be a budget amendment based on what we've discussed here in the future.
If we want, and maybe Lisa can correct, a motion to approve the recommendation. It's not necessarily in the packet, Lisa. I don't know if we're okay with that, just to get that clear guidance from council.
Yeah, I think they can make a motion, but it will be implemented with the budget amendment resolution as well.
Right, just gives us, the clarification. Great, thanks.
I guess I'm more than willing to make a motion of council support to proceed with the schedule that's been provided in the manner outlined.
Second that.
We have a motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you. It was unanimous.
Thank you.
Thanks to Brent and Jake for your work on that. I know that there were some of us, maybe Councilman Entz and I, that were trying to stretch for other uses for it, but sounds like we have the uses taken care of as it is. So, so thanks for all your work on it. So let's go to item number 6. This is the summary calendar. We got 2 items on this. We got to replace 2 replacement police vehicles and the Rigby Court subdivision bond reduction and end of warranty. It looks like our police chief might be on the line. I don't know if he wanted to address the cars or if you guys had questions for him. Chief, did you want to or no? Looks like he might not be listening anyway. So we have those 2 items on the summary action calendar.
Make a motion to approve the items on the summary action calendar as put forth.
Do I have a second to that?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm going to oppose and request a roll call vote due to the dollar amounts.
That's a good idea.
You want the chief to address the dollar amounts or me?
No, I just want.
He wants a roll call.
We're talking over $50,000. We should probably roll call it.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I get you. Okay. Yeah. Let's do a roll call on it because yes, we do have the replacement vehicles of 67,885. So we have a motion and a second on the summary action calendar. Let's do a roll call vote. Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye.
Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
Councilwoman Ivy,
Aye.
Councilman Ince,
Aye.
and Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Item number 7 is the minutes review and acceptance of the November 4th, 2020 City Council meeting. Any proposed changes to that? If not, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So
Motion
moved.
to approve the minutes as recorded, or second to Robbins, either way.
Robin, most made the motion, Councilman McEwen seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous.
I just had a change and didn't have time to mention it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will entertain that then, since we probably had you cut off. Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Yeah, sometimes I just appreciate a little more detail and clarity in the points that were made. So starting with the sentence that starts in line 17, Councilmember Fillmore commented that the push from the state for multifamily housing was related to the projected population growth and the limited space available to meet growing housing needs. And if we don't meet the needs, the supply-demand issue, which is pushing prices up, gets much worse, and the affordability challenge gets much worse.
So you would like to see that extra detail in it?
Yeah, just that end of the sentence that I added.
Okay.
Second that amendment to the minutes.
We have the motion and a second. All in favor to that change?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Hopefully that's duly noted by one of staff, city recorder, or maybe, or Lisa, one of you, to note that change, or Councilwoman.
Yeah,
Fillmore,
she
you
can
wanna
just
say
email
something?
me if she needs it in writing. She can just shoot me an email and I'll reply and send it to her.
Okay, thank you. The next item number 8, council report. Councilwoman Member Meekum, it's your turn tonight. Do you have anything to report?
I unfortunately don't really have much to report. Obviously, the Utopia is still, doing well with the COVID and all of that. Centerville is at I think a 43% take rate right now. So we're doing well on that. And we have not had a meeting on the transportation forever.
Okay.
Well, we had the Wasatch Front Regional Council meeting that kind of covered transportation issues for everyone, for those who were able to.
That wasn't for me to report on my
Right. But I'm just saying that covered transportation issues pretty well for the time.
And it's funny because all the mayors were going back and forth how many people they had, and I didn't chime in, but between our council and staff, I think we were as good or better than anybody else. So thank you for everybody's participation in that 2 weeks ago. We did that in lieu of a work session. So Robin, thank you. Or Councilman Meekum, anything else?
Oh, that's all I've got tonight.
Okay. Mayor's report. 2 items to report to you. Number 1, the outgoing fire chief, Jeff Bassett, they did not have an open house. The invitation that said due to COVID restrictions, there will not be an open house, but you're welcome to send thoughts and well wishes to him over at the fire station, or if you have a number, you can call him, or drop a note by, send an email, whatever the case may be. But there was not a public open house. Second item related to that is that the board last night voted 5-0. There was 1 not present to appoint the Assistant Fire Chief Dane Stone as the new fire chief. I had an opportunity to interview him for an hour one-on-one, and was quite impressed. I'd also gotten to know Dane over the last 3 years, and he's been with the division for a long time, 27 years. I think he'll do a wonderful job. I also got some input, I hope Chief doesn't mind me saying, from our police chief as well too. And his first thing was, he said, I highly recommend him. So, because it was important to me, as close as our fire and our police work together, that we maintain that working relationship. So all the rest of the board, like I said, felt strongly as well too. And so last night at our fire board meeting, Dane Stone became Chief Stone of the South Davis Metro Fire Service District. Any questions on that? Okay, second thing is the Veterans Park over in Bountiful. As you recall, some time ago, Chris Simonson, who was the chair of that committee, came to our city council meeting and told us all about the Veterans Park. Probably some of you have been over to see it. If you haven't, please do. It's quite incredible. If you've been to DC, you have your World War II, you have your Korean, you have your Vietnam. I've been through those numerous times, and this is as well done for our South Davis County as anything back there. And the impressive thing is that it's been done through private funds. And they have 5 sections in the park if you haven't gone to it. Well, they have more than 5 sections, but they have a section for each city. And so Centerville, we have a section of the, and it said Centerville service people, a section where you can continue to, for $275 for a brick, put anybody from Centerville. It's the 5 cities in South Davis: Centerville, Bountiful, West Bountiful, Woods Cross, North Salt Lake. They each have their own section, and you can put on your brick something about your service person, year served, war served, that type of thing. They also have a wall where they have all of the names on both the front and the back of the wall. We have a statue of the various wars, the helmets that are being held, and so we had it. And there's other parts to it as well too. It's very well done, very moving. We had a limited gathering where people were spaced. There weren't many there at all. They're going to do, instead of the large one they were going to have on Veterans Day last week, they're going to hopefully that all this is broken come Memorial Day, and they're going to do a huge one on Memorial Day. But it was moving as the taps were played, as the national anthem was played. It was a great reminder of the country we live in and all that we've gone through over the last few months, to realize that this is a free country that God has blessed, and very, very moving park. So get over there. I noticed I drove by later that night, and they have it lit up at night. I walked through it all by myself at night, lit up, and that was quite peaceful and moving as well too. I've always loved doing that at nighttime in the monuments back in DC, and I felt the strength of it every bit as much there. So so I wanted to let you know about that. Any questions about that? Okay, well, that's my report. So Brent, city manager's report.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just have 2 items. The first item, I just want to express my gratitude to our staff. Once again, I think we have a phenomenal staff, and it's like a family. We really take care of each other, but it's just been great getting to know everybody over the past, it'll be 2 years in March. But I'll say one of the biggest things I miss is, big part of my job is meeting with employees in person as they're doing their job or walking around and having conversations with them. And it's definitely wearing on me not being able to do that as frequently as I used to, with trying to keep everybody safe. And just kind of reminiscing, thinking about that tonight as I miss having those conversations or even these city council meetings in person. But I get the need to be safe. It's definitely getting too close to home. We have a number of employees and they have kids in school and that's all over the school district. So we're trying to keep everybody as safe as possible. And I think we're doing a really good job. Employees are doing the best they can. But anyway, I just want to share my appreciation. That's the incredible staff that we have. And I really appreciate you as a council and the leadership. I'll echo what Bruce said with the symphony discussion. I think it's great to get to know this council, that you do push for better. And we've seen 2 really good projects come out of the very tough discussions that we've had. The Hive is a great project, and this DeVore property definitely stepped up. Looking at what it was in the DRC meeting with Symphony to what it is today is definitely vastly improved to what it was. And I credit this council for also challenging those developers. But at the same time, we've had 2 really good developers that we've been able to work with that have been accommodating and listened for the most part. But thank you, council, for doing what you do. And the second thing is I'm really excited to participate with Chief Child tomorrow in the interviews for the lieutenant position. We are really going to miss Zan. He's just such an incredible person. But we're also excited to see what our sergeants can bring to the table. And I'm excited to be a part of those interviews and take that next step in the police department. It's really critical. Chief has done a phenomenal job developing a very strong culture in the police department, and we have leaders all over the place. So I think this is going to be a tough call. So Chief has done a phenomenal job. I hope he stays on for another 20 years, but right now he's laughing and cursing my name. But anyway, that's all I have to report at this time, unless you have questions for me.
I would like to suggest that we get the new fire chief on the agenda sometime in the next month or 2.
That's a great idea.
To give people a chance to meet him. Obviously, we're not going to meet him in person, but we've had the former chief in several times on different things, and I have not met the new chief and would like to.
Councilman Entz, he would be thrilled to, and I would be willing to reach out to him, Brad, if you so want me to, ask him to come. That's one question I had for him in my hour interview with him is, it's not the fire department under just one city. He's got to work with 5 different cities. And how does he feel about that? And how does he feel about getting around and seeing each city? And he answered all the right questions that he would be thrilled to. So very good suggestion, Councilman Entz.
And for this group, I agree. That's a great suggestion. For this group, just so you know, we have our staff meetings on opposite city council nights. So next week, Tuesday, I have an executive team meeting, and I do include the chief. The fire chief is very much involved in the decisions we make. I think some things are boring for the fire chief because they're operational for us, but he does bring that outside perspective at the same time. So we do include them in staff type exercises as well. Any other questions? Right. Thank you.
All right. I believe that we do have a need to go to closed session. So Councilman McEwen?
Yeah, I can make a motion on that. A motion that we adjourn the public city council meeting with no intent to return to convene a closed session as allowed by law to discuss the deployment of security personnel, devices, or systems.
Thank you. Second on that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Frank, can you give us instructions? Is there another Zoom address we're looking for?
Yep, I sent you a Zoom link earlier. Give us just a moment on our end to set it all up.
We have 5.
What's that?
We have 5 minutes.
5 seconds? Sure, 5 seconds is plenty.
Stephanie will give you 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay.
It'll take us a minute.
They need it while they're setting up